Hi there, I'm Ella Cullen and I'm co-founder and CMO of MindSpider, and I'm coming at you today from Guadalajara in Mexico. Now, MindSpider is a blockchain protocol for tracking raw material supply chains, and we focus specifically on minerals and generally try to help companies improve their sustainability of their supply chains. Now, while crypto is red hot at the moment, I'm not really going to cover anything about Bitcoin. I'm just going to delve a bit into the status of adoption of blockchain technology for supply chains and also what is promising, what we have to look forward to in the future. Now, sustainability in supply chains is nothing new. You and I have been demanding for decades to know where our products came from and how they were produced. When you buy an electric vehicle, you want to know that that cobalt isn't coming from a mine in the DRC, the Democratic Republic of Congo, that uses child labor. When I buy an organic cotton t-shirt, I want to know that that cotton is actually organic and that the cotton is coming from Turkey and not from Turkmenistan, which has a more negligible human rights agenda. But what we've seen in the past year is perhaps three new and key factors that are putting mounting pressure on supply chains. And the first of which is investor pressure. So about a year ago, BlackRock, which is one of the largest asset management companies in the world, actually decided that they would no longer invest in any companies that, were not sustainably founded or focused. And they would actually also exit from investments that had sustainability risk. And this was not just in the direct operations of the company, but across entire supply chains. And from that point on, we've seen a lot more investors and a lot more companies focus on how to improve their ESG metrics, so their environmental, social governance metrics, and show that they are accountable and responsible across their entire supply chains. So the second point is increased regulation. Now, a few years ago, we had the US basically kick off the process with the US Dodd-Frank Act, and Section 1502 focused specifically on conflict minerals. And this was basically just ensuring that companies were doing their due diligence when they were sourcing from the DRC. Now, since then, we have, particularly in Europe, a range of new due diligence guidelines or laws. So we have, the French duty of vigilance, or something like that. The UK Modern Slavery Act. We have Germany is actually at the moment debating a potential supply chain law and determining what that would actually encompass and how enforceable it would be. And we, of course, coming into full force this month in January 2021 is the EU conflict mineral regulation, which demands that all importers of conflict minerals, 3TGs, so gold, tin, tantalum, and tungsten, are doing their due diligence on these minerals and knowing where they come from. So there is a vast amount of compliance that is needed to be done, and of course blockchain technology as a useful tool in that. On the flip side of all of this regulation, we have a vast amount of opportunity that regulation offers. Also, we have, for instance, the Green Deal, which I think is 100 billion euros put aside to help incentivize good actors and people who are, focused on sustainability. So there's a lot of risk and opportunity in the regulatory and political world. And the third point of why supply chains are, coming under fire at the moment is, of course, something we're all familiar with, COVID-19. So 2020 showed many a company worldwide that they had very little idea where they were sourcing from. And of course, we saw supply chain shortages, and not just in your bathroom, but huge companies saw a lack of critical inputs and had to pause or stop production altogether. And I mean, we've even been approached now by companies and countries who are looking to secure these critical resources to ensure that the future of their economy is secure. So keeping all these influences and pressure in mind, what is the status of blockchain technology and the adoption of blockchain technology? Well, I mean, I think a few years ago we started out and we needed to solve some of the challenges. There are many advantages of it to blockchain technology, which we know that it works well and, with a distributed dispersed network, well with entities that don't trust each other, which is obviously makes it a great use case for global supply chains. However, there are inherent challenges, especially for us as we work with an open public protocol. So there was the question of how to keep business information confidential and secure, and also balance that with a need for greater transparency along supply chains. So, after years, we've developed this system where we have, for instance, 3 layers of data visibility. So at the base, we have a private layer where we can basically just transact between our immediate customers and share invoices and so forth. And this already reduces corruption, for instance, because we know that these invoices haven't been tampered with once they've left our hands. The next layer is transparency. So we basically track these digital certificates that we create along the entire supply chain. And this helps us to optimize things like logistics across the entire supply chain and, improve on customs and the flow of goods, basically. And finally, we have a public layer, which allows companies to basically verify any sustainability claims that they're making and show that they're not actually greenwashing. And that's visible to anyone who wants to access, obviously, the open protocol. So once we've kind of handled these blockchain issues or the challenges inherent in the technology, we of course went out and started working on projects on end-to-end traceability. So we tracked lead for Volkswagen, and we also tracked tin for one of the world's largest tin mines, San Rafael, which is owned by Minsor and is based in Peru. Now, the aim here was to track this tin from Peru, from Minsor, to our end clients at Google, Cisco, and Volkswagen, for instance. And it's great, lofty ambition, we pulled it off, managed to do this end-to-end traceability. But I think very quickly it became apparent, and I think we also see this with a lot of our competitors and collaborators, that we needed to understand how to give greater value to individual members of the supply chain. We needed to understand the use cases that really hit home for them and help to improve their core business, their core business structure and offering. And what we've done in the past year is basically started a new project with Google, actually, where we track tin again from a mine in Rwanda. And we also work with the Rwandan Mining Board on this. So we narrowed the use case a lot, specifically just to capture data about these mineral shipments as they were then imported, to make them compliant with EU regulations, EU conflict mineral regulation, which is what I mentioned before. So we've seen in general the industry really a narrowing of the use cases and a greater understanding of how to provide real value to individual players rather than trying to provide value for everyone in the supply chain. So what are we looking forward to? What are the most promising, perhaps, developments in blockchain adoption for supply chain management? Well, I think it's first and foremost the creation of ecosystems. So we saw that, supply chains are inherently an ecosystem, they're a network, and you can't do this kind of traceability or transparency project alone. So nowadays we look for ecosystems with a responsible producer, which surprisingly there aren't, the majority are probably not so responsible because they are hidden, they're opaque, they're not visible in the supply chain, and therefore the best approach is simply to be as cost effective as possible. So we're basically trying to bring about the decommoditization of assets, of minerals. We want to move from this idea of anonymous minerals to trusted products. So we want producers that are on board with being responsible and want to communicate their efforts, their responsibility efforts, to their downstream clients. So that's the first one. The next one is having a downstream client that really cares about this kind of stuff. So we're really lucky to work with companies like Google, who put a huge amount of work into understanding what's going on in their supply chains and also improving on sustainability and many other metrics, to be honest. And the third one is governments. We've seen what the resource curse can do to African nations. And I think particularly in developing countries, it's incredibly useful to have a government body on board, especially when they see the true value in it, when they understand that it's not just more tax revenue because of the, legitimization of these industries, but it's also helping, keep money in the economy and helping to ensure that, material isn't being laundered in or out of the country. And finally, NGOs. So NGOs, they've been doing incredible work for decades or even centuries. And blockchain is finally providing a tool for them to basically use their skills and amplify them. And hopefully that's what we're doing with this creation of these ecosystems. So the second point that we're really excited about is creating, a system that is kind of an open internet or decentralized internet for supply chain due diligence. So we want supply chain companies to talk to each other. We want to stop this siloing of information and this proliferation of private blockchains. I mean, private blockchains have their great use. They have great use cases, higher throughput perhaps, and there are many moments and scenarios where they are very useful, but we want to be able to share supply chain data across not only the supply chain's entities, but also across industries. So we're really excited to continue to develop this open blockchain protocol that people can build on top of. And if you want to follow us on this journey, we would be really thankful to have you on board. So please join MindSpider on any of our social media channels, or you can also join us on Telegram. And I'm really looking forward to your questions there as well. So thank you for tuning in. Please enjoy the rest of the North American Bitcoin Conference, and hope to see you again soon.